He's like, well, they didn't ask for us to understand. We just got to, we have to follow orders. But he's
ready to violate those orders.
He's gonna violate an order, and he says he's gonna.
There's a euphemism. I'm gonna violate an order.
I'm gonna violate them orders.
Perhaps I could use this as an excuse to go to those far-off planets with little polka-dotted people if necessary, and be able to talk about love, war, nature, God, sex, all those things that go to make up the excitement of the human condition.
I'm Captain James Kirk.
Spock.
Your move, Captain. Jim Kirk of the Enterprise.
What's going on?
I'm James Kirk. These people are my friend and my shipmate. Leave my crew alone.
Out of the question.
How about that?
James Kirk.
It fits like a glove, Captain.
Oh, the bonehead ideas.
Gentlemen, I'm Captain James Kirk. Get out of my chair. Get out of it now.
My greetings and felicitations, Captain. So good of you and your officers to, drop in. Absolutely smashing.
Heldor Joy, everyone, and welcome to Humanist Trek. It's a Star Trek podcast about the humanism in Star Trek. I'm Sarah Ray.
And I'm Allie Ashmead.
I want to tell you about some events that we've lined up.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, you went on the cruise. That's already come and gone.
Or I'm in the middle of it. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Depending on when this comes out.
Podcast magic. And so we're going to this is a repeat event. Mm-hmm. We're going to be in Retromania in Aurora at the fairgrounds, the Arapahoe Fairgrounds. We did that last year. That was fun.
Are we going to do a booth again, or what are we going to do?
Yeah, okay. We'll have a booth there, and that's the one last year we met all the guys from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and hung out and bullshitted.
We need to
them.
hang out with them.
I don't know if they're going to have them there or someone different.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true.
I don't think they've announced the guests yet. There's a couple we haven't booked, but we're looking at, there's one they're all here locally. So if you're listening from outside here, come visit. We have a beautiful state and we're trans friendly. So we're not on the do not visit list. You can come to Colorado and, and enjoy and come meet us. We're going to be, we're looking at one in Colorado Springs. There's another one that was Fort Collins has an event, and I've submitted us to that to see if we can get in and maybe do a panel there too.
Okay.
Those dates are all TBA. I mean, the dates of the events are announced, but whether we're going to be at them or not is TBA. But you should definitely come see us at Retromania, and we'll talk about it, of course, when we get a little closer. And let me tell you what I like about these events that we've booked. And I don't know how the Colorado Springs one, if we're able to get into that, might be. Mm-hmm. But I like the smaller conventions.
I do too, to be honest.
Yeah. We tried to go to Fan Expo, and I think we talked about it on the show. It's just too many fucking people. So crowded.
Unorganized.
That you couldn't, it was just chaos.
Just getting around. Yeah.
Yeah. It was not an enjoyable experience because of that. And so I like those smaller conventions in general.
Yeah. Yeah. You get to talk to people, stop you, and they feel free to stop you and talk to you, and it's just it's friendlier.
Is there a point in which you think a Comic-Con could get too big?
Yeah.
And have to, I don't know, introduce some bacteria that will kill some of them off so that it's not so overcrowded?
Oh, man. Well,
that was a long road, but we got there.
Well, if you've ever been to...
it's been a long road.
Getting from there to here. If you've ever been to... I've not been to Comic-Con on the West Coast, but I have been to Dragon Con. Let me tell you, I did fear for my safety because when you are smushed in a hotel lobby and you can't move, that is what it feels like.
No, thanks.
It's terrifying, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, here we go. Star Trek, the original series, Season 3, Episode 16, The Mark of Gideon.
Sir, contact with an object. It's moving toward us. No visual contact yet.
Deflectors, full intensity.
Mr. Sulu, yes, Captain. Anything on your scanners?
It's coming at light speed.
Collision course. Visual contact.
Anything, over?
All wavelengths dominated by ionization effects, sir.
All engines full stop.
So the planet Gideon is not a member of the Federation, not for lack of trying, but they've finally agreed to allow a single delegate to visit the planet, Captain of the Enterprise. And in the transporter room, Kirk's like, Sure is a shame we can't do shore leave here. I hear this planet is one of them paradise planets that we're real fond of. And Spock's like, I'll just take your word for it.
Yep. I look forward to you reporting back.
Yeah.
So Spock is working the controls and he beams them down. And they show Kirk dematerializing on the transporter pad. And then they also show him rematerializing on the transporter pad. But then they show this shot, which I don't think they've ever shown before, of the view of someone on the transporter pad looking out, and you see them at the little control.
Yes.
And Spock's not there. And he's like, hey, wait a minute. I thought you were going to beam me out, but somehow Spock's gone. So he goes over to the comm system or whatever that panel is and starts flicking buttons and trying to call Spock. No answer. And he goes to the bridge. Empty. Everybody's gone.
He tries calling Scotty and Bones, no answer. It's very quickly realized that Kirk is alone on the Enterprise, which is still orbiting Gideon.
I did not know what was going on at this point. I was like, what?
Right. After the theme, Kirk is slinking around the bowels of the Enterprise, and we hear an off-camera Kirk talking about being alone on the Enterprise without any idea what happened to the crew, but he must have suffered some kind of memory lapse because there's an unexplained bruise on his arm. I know the signs of domestic violence when I see them.
Mm-hmm. He doesn't know how it got there. My arm hurts.
Back on the actual Enterprise bridge, Uhura is getting a phone call from Gideon, and we see 5 men sitting behind a table. They appear on the view screen, and the lead dude, Ambassador Hoden, speaks. Kirk never showed up. We gave you the coordinates. They kind of confirm on this phone call. Yep, those were the right coordinates.
Did you have 545? That's what I got. Yeah, didn't work. Yeah, don't know what happened.
Hoden is played by David Hurst, who appeared in a lot of shows. Car 54, where are you?
Oh, cool.
Do you remember that show?
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved Car 54. This is another one. Patty Duke. I loved Patty Duke, too. I kind of had a thing for Patty Duke.
Aston?
Patty Duke, the TV show. It was on Nick at Night. It was on Nick at Night in my time.
Okay. Maybe I don't. Maybe it's
Patty
not the
Duke
same.
Is, what is?
Yeah, Patty Duke Aston. Okay, that's her name. I think she got married again or something. She's Sean Astin's mom, who was in Lord of the Rings as Samwise Gamgee.
I'll be damned. Man from U.N.C.L.E., Mission Impossible, Ryan's Hope, Charlie's Angels. Hoden very quickly refuses any responsibility, which Spock agrees to. But when Spock requests permission to beam down and conduct a search, well, that request is denied.
Hoden reminds them, he's like, you know how we are about, we have this tradition of being isolated from contaminants, so we just don't want you beaming down. We'll do some research on our end.
Yeah. We're isolationists, and, even by talking to you illegal aliens, we're way out of our comfort zone. No, you'll have to wait outside the southern border while we review your paperwork. That's how these people are. Hoden's like, we don't want any contamination from outsiders, what with their violent wars and all. And Spock's like, sir, this is a Star Trek, not a Star Wars. We come in peace or whatever. So Hoden assures Spock that they will conduct a search, but otherwise Spock isn't allowed to beam down and, maybe check your instruments. Maybe it's on your end.
Oh, I could tell. So Spock is doing his very, 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 very best to be diplomatic.
Yes. And they often make big deal out of, we're not diplomats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Spock, who is actually the best person for the role of diplomat, who's logical and cool-headed, is losing his fucking patience. But yeah, so he's doing his best.
In the midst of this phone call, McCoy arrives on the bridge, and after the call disconnects, he promptly takes up the "we just can't sit here and do nothing" position.
I hate him. I know. But then he says, we're not diplomats.
Yeah.
But Spock is right because, we do represent the Federation, so diplomacy is all we got, dude.
Yep. And why can't they just beam down? Well, there's something blocking their sensors. So it's not just like not allowed that you can beam down, but like technologically prevented from doing so. So even if they guessed at some coordinates, they might beam down into an ocean or something.
Oh, yeah, or a wall or something.
Yeah.
So they have to depend on Ambassador Hoden to give them exact coordinates.
Yeah. So Spock's first step is to ask Starfleet for permission to conduct a search with or without permission from Gideon. The second step he takes is to have them start scanning space around them 1 degree at a time.
Chekhov is like,
maybe he was
what?
beamed out into space or something.
Well, he's dead now if that's the case. But Chekhov is like, the possibilities are like endless. That's going to take us like 2 million years to scan every little degree. And Spock's like, well, you better get started.
Spock's like, do you remember on the last episode where we took all that time putting in the self-destruct sequence? We can make time.
Exactly. Meanwhile, on the deserted Enterprise, Kirk is searching the ship and he sees a woman just
this week's Star Trek sex object
dancing in the hallway. I do like her outfit, by the way.
Yeah, this is like a sheer purple kind of thing, jumpsuity thing, and it's got like blue.
It's like a bathing suit, but
bits. Yeah.
Anyway, it's really cool. It's really cool. He sees her and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing on my ship?" And she gives her name as if she suddenly remembered it. Oh, it's O'Donna. And she's in awe of the ship. And when he demands what she's doing there, she's like, "Oh, is this your ship? This is your whole ship?" She says she doesn't know how she got there. And she's wondering, did you bring me here? Because 1 minute she was standing in a crowded auditorium, standing room only, people pushing against each other. She couldn't breathe. And next minute she was here.
O'Donna is played by Sharon Acker, who was in The Wild Wild West, Get Smart, Gunsmoke, Love American Style, because they were all in that too. Mod Squad, Barnaby Jones, The Love Boat. She even did some soaps in the 80s and 90s.
All the shows I watched. Like, I love The Love Boat, Barnaby Jones.
It just makes me think of that episode we did of South Park where it starts out at Mr. Garrison's talking about, now children, last week on Barnaby Jones.
I love those shows.
Oh, God. Kirk tells her of his trouble, 430 crew, and only he is left. She continues in her story. So she was in this room screaming, and then she was here dancing through the hallways, appreciating how much space there was to move around in. And then there you were.
Oh, my.
Here we go.
They got the whole ship to themselves.
She doesn't know how long she's been there, but it couldn't have been very long. But maybe that's important somehow. So Kirk's off on a fact-finding mission or something to try to figure out this week's puzzle. Back on the Enterprise, Uhura basically says she called Starfleet with their request, and Starfleet said, call the Federation. And she called the Federation, and the Federation said, go ask Starfleet.
Oh.
What'd your dad say? Dad said to come ask you.
In a circle. It's kind of like dealing with your parents, but it's also like typical red tape government stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like going through a phone menu and press 1 to get here, and then you press 1, you go there, and then they like press 3, and then you press 3, and then they send you back to the department that you started at.
A lot is made in this episode about diplomacy, and it happens again here. Spock's like, diplomats and bureaucrats may function differently, but they're basically the same. So, yeah, it's all about the bureaucracy and red tape.
Back on the empty Enterprise, Kirk checks the ship's the chronometer, because in big letters, it has the year, the star date, and the time. And he somehow figures out that he's lost 9 minutes. But just in talking to that chick, it's been a few minutes. But he somehow figures that he's lost 9 minutes. Between the time he beamed down to Gideon and the time he found himself there, 9 minutes. And
the perspective of us, the viewer, there was no time between. Right. What we saw was the beam out and then a beam in, and there was nothing in the middle.
Right.
Kirk assumes that O'Donna is from Gideon, but she's like, I've never heard of that. What's a Gideon?
Logical assumption, because that was the only planet around.
They were nearby, yeah.
And she wasn't just beamed in from like thin air.
Right.
But she claims she has no idea what Gideon is.
Kirk talks us back through the whole teaser to this episode of Star Trek, the original series again, for her sake, because she wasn't there to watch it. But she doesn't think she was brought here from Gideon. In fact, when Kirk switches on the view screen, Gideon is gone, now replaced with a slow-moving Windows 95 screensaver.
He doesn't know where they are, but he kind of senses, okay, we're not here by accident. Something has arranged this thing for you and I, and which I think is pretty quick to, I mean, I appreciate it, but it's pretty quick to get to that conclusion.
O'Donna's like, you know, before when I said I wasn't afraid, I am now.
Back on the bridge with the actual people on board of the Enterprise, Uhura has the ambassador.
The ambassador comes on the screen and he's like, good news, everybody. That's a Futurama joke that you're going to have to get by watching Futurama.
I have not seen Futurama. Okay. I know.
When we woke up, we had these bodies.
Say it in Russian.
When we woke up, we had these bodies.
Now say nuclear vessels.
No.
Well, this time he's wanting to see their faces, but he does say, good news. And he's like, yeah, your captain is definitely not here.
We looked real hard.
Yeah, and so now you can investigate all the other possibilities and leave us out of it.
Yep. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
Too bad, too sad. Yeah.
A little too quick to send them away.
I agree.
Yeah. Hoden says that Spock requested a thorough search, and we used everything at our means to accomplish this. It's all in the record. And Spock's like, your record on the subject isn't exactly precise. Burn! And the bald dude next to Hoden leans over and whispers something at him. This is the same guy that whispered the coordinates to Hoden on that other phone, on the first phone call.
Yeah.
So he whispers something, and then Hoden's like, well, hey, buddy, I sure hope you aren't trying to start shit between the Federation and Gideon. So then they engage in a battle of the wits.
So they're on the view screen talking to each other, and I think Spock forgets to hit the mute button.
Yes.
Because he's got the peanut gallery of McCoy and Scotty and Uhura, and they're sort of like giving their opinion while he's talking
Thinking
to them.
You're on hold or on mute. Yeah.
And McCoy's like, are you going to let him get away with that? And all this other shit? And
this was so great. Okay, so Spock is basically like, you're twisting my words to suit your narrative. I thought I was pretty clear. And Hoden says, in diplomacy, all we have are words, so we must make sure our meaning is clear. And Spock's like, I'm basically a scientist. Aren't you a scientist? I'm basically a scientist. I'm a scientist. And in my profession, that's what I wanted. I wanted a little more.
You're like, be
bitch, I'm
assertive.
A scientist. Yeah.
Because he usually is.
So he says, I'm a scientist. Clarity of formulation is essential in my profession too. And Hoden's like, well, then you should be better at choosing your words. And McCoy's like, you gonna let him give you that shit? You never take that from me.
Right? And then even Uhura says he's infuriating, which she never says anything.
No.
How can you stand it? And Scotty's like, he's gonna twist your meaning. And the whole peanut gallery's talking. and they're not on mute.
Nope. Gideon heard all of that. But Hoden kind of fakes a glitchy signal. There was some interference there. I didn't get you. Can you say that again?
There was a lot of noise.
Yeah.
What was that?
It was some static.
I love that. He does that a couple of times.
Yeah. And Spock's like, oh yeah, sorry about that. Again, I request permission to beam down and conduct a search. And Hoden's like, your shitty equipment can't even handle a Skype call. You lost your captain in a transporter malfunction and now you want to do it again? And again, if the trouble with tribbles taught us anything, you don't shit talk Scotty's equipment. And he starts shit talking the transporter and Scotty goes off.
He gets hot. He's like, the transporter was in perfect condition. I'm not going to take that shit. I'll guarantee myself that it was. Take me down there right this minute and I'll prove it. But Spock is like, calm down. Just go to the transporter and
wait for me
and just shut the fuck up. This is making it worse.
Scotty like tucks his tail between his legs and mopes off to the turbo lift.
I mean, Hoden again, he says, I'm sorry. I didn't catch that. What was that?
And Spock arguably lies.
Yes. Which
which they're
Vulcans
not
never
supposed to
lie.
do. Mm-hmm. So he lies and says that the transporter did have a malfunction, but it was repaired. And again, request permission to beam down. And Hoden finally relents a little and says, okay, well, we can test the skill of your very excitable repairman. But instead of beaming you down, you'll be beaming one of my dudes up.
So they go through, it's the bald guy that's standing next to Ambassador Hoden. So they go through the exchange of coordinates again.
Yes.
He says it in 3 numbers and they repeat, and just to make sure they've got the right one.
Yep.
They successfully beam this guy on board. And we're like, okay, it's working. God's like, let's beam me down to Gideon. And Hoden's like, no. We've already beamed someone down from the Enterprise. And that didn't work. So that's not going to happen.
He does this like, oh, well, when I agreed to that thing, it turns out it's actually above my pay grade and I didn't have the authority to agree to that anyway. So, we'll discuss it at the next board meeting.
And then he hangs up. And I'm like, really?
This dude is shady.
Yeah.
There's some sneaky shit going on with this guy. Spock calls back down to tell Scotty to beam Krodak back to Gideon.
You should have taken him prisoner or something.
It could have.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't get your dude back until you let me beam down and look for my captain.
He probably wouldn't care.
We could have done some negotiation. This was really great transition between the real Enterprise and Kirk's replica.
I think so.
Spock tells Uhura to call Starfleet and demand an immediate reply to the request to beam down. And as Uhura starts repeating, Enterprise to Starfleet Command, Enterprise to Starfleet Command, we cut to Kirk on his bridge, his empty bridge, also Enterprise to Starfleet Command.
Yeah.
That was great. I love that.
I did too. He was messing with the same communication controls. I just thought that was brilliant. He's trying to send a message, red priority, but nobody's answering. And O'Donna's like, isn't it working? Someone could have heard you. And so nobody's hearing him. And she's just following him around. And he's swapping tapes and doing all kinds of stuff. And he's talking space terminology, which she doesn't understand. And he does something to where he supposedly, I guess this is how you move out of warp speed.
Uh-huh.
You switch the floppy disk.
I didn't know that's how you did it.
Yeah. And so she's like, and she wants to know what he's doing. And he's like, yeah, we're moving out of warp. She's like, but it feels the same. And he's like, of course it does. But then he looks at the view screen and he's like, well, maybe it is the same. Something's not right there.
Meanwhile, O'Donna's like, wow, it's so quiet and peaceful. And they sit on the steps between the pit, the center of the bridge, and the upper deck. And O'Donna's like, and we're alone. And she would really like this to last forever. And Kirk kind of plays into this for a bit.
She says, and this is where my mind went all dirty. She's like, we're alone. Can you make it last a long, long time?
Oh, my.
And he says, well, how long do you like it to last?
He's like, I can go 2 or 3 times.
But yeah, she's really happy to be not around anyone, which, I get that sometimes. I totally get you, girl. I feel you, girl.
Kirk's like, he kind of plays into this and, maybe he can get some information out of her or something. So he's like, oh, forever? I mean, we have plenty of power, food, condoms. We should be good.
Yep.
We learn here that wherever O'Donna comes from, maybe Gideon, maybe not, it's extremely overpopulated. So much so that there's literally nowhere a person can go and be alone. Like, you go into, there's not a porta potty on the whole fucking planet that when you open the door and somebody already in there.
Can you imagine?
Could you imagine?
But she said that there's no beach, there's no mountain, there's no garden where there isn't just people. And I'm just like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So no wonder she's happy being alone. She said that people would kill to find a place alone to themselves.
She also gently touches his face and makes a big deal out of wanting Kirk to lose his fear and concern for the crew.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big red flag.
Mm-hmm.
And she explains that this crowding is so bad that people would kill or be willing to die for it, even.
And so he asks her, so have you come to kill, or
to die?
Have you come to die?
Yeah. Who sent you here? And
who sent you? No, yeah.
And she insists she wasn't sent here. Kirk's got her head in his hands now and asks if she came to kill. Maybe she came to die. And she's like, I don't know why I'm here, but fuck me already.
Right? And
you fool.
And they get started on the kissing at least.
The string music swells.
And then as they're kissing, unnoticed by them on the view screen are these faces that are like hooded, like, I don't know what you call that outfit. It's not like a gimp. Well, it is sort of a gimp mask, but they have like a hood on.
Yeah,
it's almost like a religious nun,
like a monk.
Nun monk
hood,
thing.
Yeah.
All you can see is their face.
Cloak.
And they're all like 20 of these people staring at them from the view screen as if they're watching Star Trek TV.
And they all cross their arms and go, I see a little silhouette of a man. Scaramouche, will you do the fun?
I'm like, oh no, it's Bohemian Rhapsody again. And off they go to fuck.
As these people watch from the view screen.
They're going to get a show.
There was a very weird cut here, and I don't know if you noticed it, but I didn't see anything written about it. So they cut from Kirk and O'Donnell are in the pit of the bridge down low, and then the next cut is them on the upper deck. So we didn't see them go up, which was okay. But then we get a bit of them walking towards the turbo lift, and then the camera whip pans over to Uhura's station for like a hot second, and then we're back to the faces on the view screen. It was like,
I didn't notice that. I'd have to watch that
like,
one.
Did somebody just bonk the camera and it just turned?
And then they forgot to fix
they were
it.
like,
and they didn't fix it in the remastering.
No.
Or maybe they meant to do it.
The most disconcerting cut I've seen in this show yet.
Weird.
Yeah.
Kirk and O'Donnell are walking in the hallway and he's talking about his arm hurting. He's like, now I guess they've done what they need to do. And he's like, now, if I could just fix my pesky arm, if I could find a medical kit because his arm's hurting. And she's like, you can cure that? And he's like, yeah, the irritation would be gone. And she wants to know, like, how that works, like how medical stuff works. He's like, I'd be fine. It would heal itself, but with the medical kit, he can fix it quicker. He mentions again that he doesn't remember how it happened. And then as they're talking, there's this weird sound that comes over, and it sounds sort of like drum beats, but then it just keeps getting louder and louder.
O'Donnell thinks this sounds like an engine. How does she know what an engine sounds like?
She acts like she's never been on a starship, so how would she know?
How does she know what an engine sounds like, but doesn't know what a bruise is?
Yeah, and how to fix a bruise.
Yeah.
Yeah, something's not right with her.
Anyway, Kirk's like, no, I know every noise this ship can make. It's not that. It's got to be outside. So she's like, yeah, like a storm, but not a storm either. So off they go to the observation deck where Kirk tries to open the viewing port. But at first it doesn't open. So he pulls on the emergency override. And as the shutter slides open, there's the green faces again.
Whoops. They're all looking at him like, again, they're watching TV.
Yeah.
It's like, oops, they did not anticipate that he was going to be so resourceful and figure out how to open one of those shutters.
Yeah. And for some reason, Kirk grabs a hold of O'Donnell, like wraps his full body around her like he's going to protect her from something.
I mean, I guess it startled him. But here's what got me. So he sees all these people and he somehow figures out that what he's hearing is the heartbeat of all of these people that are pressed up against the ship.
That's a stretch.
Really? Weak sauce.
Yeah. So the faces then fade to stars and they're both like, what the fuck? But it looks like Kirk is starting to put some of the pieces to the puzzle together now in saying it was like the heartbeat of all those people. So I don't know. I
have a question.
Yes.
When did Gideon have time to build a replica?
And how would they have known how to get it right?
I know.
Right enough to fool him.
Like, and I never figured out, okay, is this really a replica or is it just something in their mind?
Right. Yeah.
It was I don't know.
I think the episode makes the case it's a physical thing.
Yeah.
But I would come more off believing that it was a mental illusion.
I don't know. Well, he did say it could be a mirage. They could exist in our mind, those people that they just saw. But he's slowly putting it together that where he is not the Enterprise.
And the more he talks, the more frightened she gets of these ideas. And she insists she doesn't know why all of this is happening. But when Kirk says, maybe they're trying to keep us from finding out where we are, that we'll be content to stay here, she goes from 0 to, oh, yes, let's be content to stay here together forever. Pretty damn quick.
And that's when it tips him off. She's in on it. When she's like, why don't you just be content? Just be happy.
Yep.
And he's like, what do you mean be content?
Kirk whips around so fast that we see this look on her face like, oh shit, I fucked that one up.
Yeah, she did. Yep, you talk too much, bitch.
Yep. Kirk grabs her by the arms, and I don't ever like that, but Kirk grabs her by the arms and starts throwing questions at her. What happened to my crew? Are they dead? And she claims to not know, but he asks, did you kill them so you could have the ship to yourself? And now we see that this whole thing is playing out on the TV screen in the council chambers on Gideon.
Yep. They are watching Star Trek TV. So we're seeing the same scene, but now we're seeing it through the council chamber's eyes with O'Donna and Kirk. And O'Donna suddenly starts to not feel so well. She's like, something's happening. I've never felt like this before. And she's like, is this how it feels when somebody's getting sick?
I didn't connect that at this scene until later, now thinking back, that what she was referring to there, that she knew.
Yeah.
At this point, by this point, that she knew that she was sick and should be feeling illness. And when Kirk reminds her that there's no sickness on her planet, which, did we learn that earlier? I don't remember learning that earlier.
I don't think they meant, so I don't think they said anything. All that
Just
they...
paradise.
Well, all that they were concentrating on was keeping outside people out, no contaminants. They didn't really say that there was no sickness, but I guess we should have inferred that or should have guessed that because Kirk apparently knows there's no sickness on your planet.
And she's like, well, there will be now. There will be sickness and death. And she passes out in his arms while these council members watch what I can only assume at this point is like, as Gideon turns, or General Gideon.
Oh, the guiding Gideon, guiding light, or
the young and the Gideon.
I like that one.
All my Gideon.
All my Gideon.
And keep it going in the comments.
I love it.
Anyway, she passes out in his arms, and he scoops her up and carries her off as the council members get up and file out of the room. And behind them, through this window, we see these green-lit people all shoulder to shoulder outside the room.
Like moving around, trying to move around, but they're like too crowded.
Okay, the way these people moved, and I don't know if this is something that y'all did, but when I was in school, I remember, and Mrs. Doan should be very proud that I remember anything from my science because I was not great at science. Famously, I wrote, I hate science atop a science test and spelled science wrong.
Oh, man. Wow.
Anyway, and look at me now. I love science.
That's awesome.
It reminded me, we did this thing where like molecules of water as it boiled, heated up and cooled down, right? So you all got up and stood up in the room and we're moving very slowly because it's, room temperature water. And, right. And then as the water heats up, then the molecules move a whole lot faster and they're bouncing all over the room. And we had to do that with our bodies as us as a molecule.
Well,
and
that
so
would have been fun.
as these people are like just bumping against each other and stuff, that's what it made me think of.
It does. That's exactly what it looks like. I missed that experiment. I didn't get to do that.
We can go out. We'll get Becca in here. We'll do
Hey, we're water.
We're water.
Molecules. Yeah, we're water.
Kirk carries the purple princess down the hallway to sickbay, but the hallway isn't empty this time. Blocking the door to sickbay, there stands Hoden with a couple of gimp suit goons, and he's like, my dear Captain Kirk, I got real Koloth vibes from this dude.
My dear. Yeah.
My dear Captain Kirk. Our experiment is going splendidly.
Again, here they are, caught up in an experiment from some civilization that they've created this fake environment for them.
Kirk's thinking about his girlfriend, though. He's like, come on, man, you got to let me in there. I can totally save her with modern medicine.
And what probably makes no sense to Kirk is that, look, we're grateful to you for her illness, is what Odin says to Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, you've done well, my daughter. So this is the ambassador's daughter. So he's happy that his daughter is sick.
This reminds me, I heard on a radio the other morning, I was at work, and we put on, this is one of them FM morning zoo crew shows, you know, and the woman of the duo or of the group or whatever, she was like, yeah, if you put onions in your socks before you go to sleep, it sucks out the toxins from your bodies. And I wanted to throw that radio so fucking hard across the room.
What the fuck?
What? You're not a journalist, but your voice carries, as a radio personality, carries some weight in the community. And you're talking about this bullshit nonsense,
onions
junk
in your
science.
sock.
Oh, have you not seen this?
No.
Oh, this is one of those.
Well, you'll
home
certainly
remedy
drive
whatevers.
everyone away from you, that's for sure.
And they tell you to cut an onion and put it in your sock under your foot as you go to sleep. On the bottom of your foot was where all the toxins come out. And then when you get up in the morning, you look at the onion and it looks different.
It's black.
Yeah, they try to say that's the toxins. It's the dumbest shit, but people believe this stuff. And I heard it on the radio, and that's what this made me think of when he was
I'm
like,
gonna go get an onion. It will keep my cats out of the bed, that's for sure.
Kirk's still got her limp in his arms, and he hands her over to her father and is left to be guarded by the Gimp Suit brothers. As Hodin says, we'll need the captain for a long time.
Great, so now he's prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
Back on the bridge of the real Enterprise, the Enterprise crew is watching the view screen as the Starfleet Admiral finally responds to their request. And unfortunately, it's not what they want to hear. The Admiral says, I'm sorry, but we can't override the Federation's directives because we don't want a diplomatic incident. So we can't do anything. We don't want to provoke war.
This is just more of the red tape bureaucracy bullshit.
Right. And then he says, you haven't proved your case to the Federation or Starfleet, for that matter, that, like, is Kirk really in danger?
Mm-hmm.
Has he been kidnapped? You haven't, we don't know. But Spock says that he's positive he can do so. And when he said this, I was like, is he bluffing?
From our position, we didn't have a lot of data, a lot of evidence.
No, he says he's convinced
for anything
that Captain's been taken prisoner, and he knows where the Captain's being held. And, like, this was news to us because we didn't know that Spock knew all this, but he just didn't know that whether his life is threatened or not. And so because of that, the Admiral denied permission.
Back in what looks like the captain's quarters, Odana is lying on the bed.
It is. Why didn't they take her to sickbay? Or maybe they didn't do sickbay. Maybe they
hadn't built it.
They had
to have. I don't know.
It doesn't make any sense.
So, Odana's laying in Kirk's bed suffering.
Yeah.
And Hodin is with her. She's asking a lot of questions about death and dying. Will it last long? How will you know when I'm about to die? And to the latter, he says, your body temperature will be very great, and there might be some oozing and pus in your vagina.
Oh my God.
You will see us, but not know who we are, that sort of thing. And she's like, you got to let me see him before that happens.
So she's talking to her dad, right? And he's asking her what it's like to feel pain.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing that the Gideon people don't feel any pain. And she describes it like when you see that people have no hope for happiness and you feel despair and your heart's heavy and you can't do anything. She's like, pain is like that. So I'm guessing they don't feel physical pain.
Right. He tells her that he's very proud of her courage in the face of death.
That's horrible to send your daughter to die. Kirk's trying to get in to see her.
They're like, I'm sorry, sir. Only family members are allowed to visit in the emergency room. And you have not proven that you're a family member, so you're not allowed.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And she has...
Apparently, they set her up to be infected by the one man in all the galaxy with the most alien STDs.
Yeah.
Because Kirk is demanding to get in there and see her, but Hoden's like, you can't. She's got vegan xenopolychlamydia. And Kirk's like, fuck. I am very familiar with that one.
Attention, if you or a loved one has been diagnosed with xenopolychlamydia, you may be entitled to financial compensation. Xenopolychlamydia is a rare sexually transmitted disease linked to exposure in the Orion system. Traveling to the Orion system may put you at risk. Please don't wait. Call 1-920-550-TREK. A free legal consultation and financial information packet. Xenopolychlamydia patients, call now. Again, that number is 920-550-TREK. It's something called vegan choriomeningitis. So,
vegan xenopolychlamydia.
Yeah, that it's rare, and I guess even they knew that. So they knew that Kirk had this at some point
somehow,
and that is why they wanted him specifically. It's rare, and if it isn't treated in 24 hours, then it's pretty much fatal.
So they used this STD in Kirk's blood to infect her, which is why Kirk's arm was injured. Kirk tries to get past them into the room with Odana, but this just kicks off a Star Trek fight with the two gimp suit goons.
Star Trek fight!
And Kirk loses this fight rather quickly. He calls Hoden mad, but Hoden says, no, we are desperate.
So back on the bridge of the real Enterprise, McCoy is kind of bitching. He's like, how can Starfleet deny permission to search for the captain? And Spock is being all Spock. And he's like, well, they didn't ask for us to understand. We just got to, we have to follow orders. But he's ready to violate those orders. He's gonna violate an order, and he says he's gonna.
There's a euphemism. I'm gonna violate an order.
I'm gonna violate them orders. And McCoy, this has to be like a first, maybe. But McCoy's like, that's the best decision you could possibly make, and they actually in agreement. So what they're gonna do is Spock is going to beam down, and first, they verify the coordinates. The original coordinates where they beamed Kirk down to, and then the coordinates where they beamed the one dude from.
Mm-hmm.
They were like a couple of numbers were transposed.
It was a little dyslexic bullshit here.
He's like, okay, they don't match. So Spock's going to beam down and gives Scott the con. And this time he takes a communicator with him.
Which is standard landing party gear. And why didn't Kirk?
Kirk didn't have it. Kirk didn't have a communicator when he. Well, yeah. So
yeah, and he should have.
Mm-hmm.
So Spock's gonna beam down. He leaves Scotty in charge, and McCoy's like, "Oh, this is great. Let me go grab my medical tricorder real quick. I'll meet you in the transporter room."
Yeah, they thought about that at least.
And Spock's like, "Oh no, you can't come." So Spock materializes on the fake transporter pad and starts tricordering around. Walks over to the console, tries to call Kirk. Getting no answer, he makes his way through the empty hallways following tricorder signals.
Right.
Meanwhile, in the council chamber, Hoden is explaining that their planet used to be a paradise, but because the atmosphere has always been germ-free, people flourished. Physical health was like perfection too, and their lifespans increased to the point where people only ever died from very old age.
But then, haven't you heard of birth control, people?
Apparently they had not. This next bit should really be a warning to us in the present. Kirk says, those are conditions that most people would envy. And Hoden says, yeah, for a while, but then the birth rate continued to rise. Population grew until we found ourselves here, overpopulated with no natural controls on our growth.
And then Kirk is like, okay, well, you could sterilize people. But then apparently they have a way of regenerating their body parts and things like that. So if their body would just fix itself, that's crazy.
What about condoms and IUDs then? The Federation gives that shit away at pride parades every year.
I know.
I found it very surprising that those topics were allowed through the censors at this in this time, because like pro-lifedness of the viewing audience in the day, right? And to suggest, because Hodin's like, are you kidding? Sterilizing and prophylactics? Like, we're basically Catholics here. Sperm is sacred and whatever. Like,
we gotta put it to good use. Don't waste the drop.
Yeah, life is sacred and life begins at ejaculation. And he's like, what's your next suggestion for population growth? Abortion?
Oh, we couldn't possibly. But what is he resorting to right now? He's resorting to trying to kill his own daughter, who is very much not a fetus.
Right.
She's
right. So his argument here is like, we care so much about life that it's put us in this pickle because we also can't destroy or interfere with the creation of life because Jesus, and we love it so deeply. And he says, we are incapable of destroying or interfering with the creation of that which we love so deeply. Life in every form, from fetus to developed being, it is against our tradition, against our very nature. We simply could not do it.
But then Kirk makes the point that I want to scream at him. He's like, yeah, but you can kill a young girl. And also, your daughter, hello.
Yeah, square that circle for me.
But he's like, no, we're just trying to readjust the life cycle of an entire civilization. Same thing. I mean, that's exactly what you're doing is killing. You're introducing what you know will be deadly to your daughter.
Like, essentially, this is the best solution they could come up with. And something, sunk cost fallacy, something. So now she will die as a way to show other Gideons that they can also choose to die?
Basically, he's like, I want y'all to kill yourselves so that we can, like, have some room, some breathing room.
But here we go again, like, ask for help. Here's another example of we roll up to a place and they're like, well, this is the only way we could possibly think to do it. So we have to do it this way. There's no other way.
Yeah. And also these people, it seems they want something that's going to fit within their beliefs as well, because they're not just going to do something.
Kirk's like, xenopolychlamydia is super rare. Where are you going to get that going forward? And of course, the plan all along was to keep Kirk there. His blood will provide it.
But, and that's okay? I mean, how is that humane or whatever? Like, fair?
But they had hoped he would stay willingly by falling in love with Odana. He would give up his freedom and become a willing sacrifice. Kirk's like, oh no, not me. You have other options, even beyond the few I've mentioned already. I will not offer my life for this purpose. I got shit to do, a ship to get back to, a crew that needs me.
Other women in the galaxy. I mean, come on. Yeah.
And he says, I have hopes other than death for Odana, too. And Hodin says, she pleaded with you to stay. And Kirk's like, yeah, about that. What was said and the cervical shattering sex she got, that was supposed to be for us. Y'all weren't supposed to be watching that.
Yeah, that's invasion of privacy.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, her fever is rising. And she's calling for you, Jim.
Go to her. Meanwhile, Spock arrives on the fake bridge, pokes some buttons, and declares the replica completely inoperative.
He's got scanners and stuff, and he's got his own communicator, so, you know.
Yeah, so he flips open the StarTAC and he calls up Scotty. And with the best comedic straight man execution, Mr. Spock, where are you? I'm speaking to you from the bridge of the Enterprise. And they all look around like, no, you're not, I don't see you.
And he's like, you're where? And I mean, and they did kind of had to stretch this out for the comedic effect. And again, he repeats it on the bridge of the Enterprise.
So he explains the duplicate Enterprise theory and that he's got life sign readings, so the captain must be around here somewhere. We get a rare Spock's log explaining the facts up to now, and that he's got to find the captain before it's too late. In the fake captain's quarters, Kirk is begging to bring McCoy down and heal Odana. But Hodin explains that she did not wish there to be any interference in the natural progression of this. In fact, her death at a young age is supposed to be a symbol to show others that their life cycle can be changed.
Sacrifice. Martyr. Yeah. But Kirk's like, she doesn't need to die, you know? Even if she lives her blood's going to have the antibodies so that you can make
use
serum.
that. Yeah.
Just as you're using me to suck me dry. Yeah, you could use your daughter.
Kirk goes to her. Time is short, but she's glad to see Kirk again. Again, she talks of wishing for their forever. And Kirk's like, I have a cure for xenopolychlamydia up on the Enterprise.
Here's a phone number you can call.
But she says she isn't afraid, just that she wishes with all of her heart to stay with him forever. And Kirk's like, they all say that after, And she passes out in his arms.
Spock's following the life signs, and he's made his way to outside the captain's quarters. And he comes up behind the two gimp-dressed guys. I was hoping for a double neck pinch.
Yep.
But,
Nope.
So he neck pinches one of them, and he just fucking throws the other one down the hallway.
Tosses him.
And I'm like, and that is enough to knock him out, apparently. He sees Kirk, and he's like, you're looking well, Captain. Evidently, Starfleet's analysis was right. You're fine, basically.
Kirk's like, Spock, we have a patient for Dr. McCoy. Call Scotty. So Spock flips out his StarTAC again and calls up Scotty to lock on to the StarTAC and beam 3 up. And he warns Hoden not to interfere because he already has one serious problem to resolve with the brass.
Yeah.
And they dematerialize.
He shouldn't even be there in the first place.
On the Enterprise, triumphant end of episode music plays.
They're all done. She's cured. She's in sick bay. She's cured. She's fine.
McCoy's like, Eureka! I've done it again! 2 for 2, baby! O'Donna is cured just like Kirk, and she's like, how can you even look at me after I deceived you like that?
Don't look at me.
Let alone smile at me.
And he's fine, you know.
Yeah. Kirk's like, oh, just let me look at you. And she calls him a gentleman. She says Kirk is no longer needed on Gideon. She can take his place. And Kirk's like, but is that what you really want? And she says, it's what I must do. I am needed there now. And Kirk presses at the tent forming in his pants and says, you're needed everywhere, O'Donna. You're needed here. He holds out his arm for her and they walk into the hallway where crew are going about their duties. And O'Donna notices how different it is from the replica ship they created. This one works.
Yep, and there's a few people, or a smattering of people.
Kirk's like, well, there is one difference. This one is crowded. And she's like, oh, you haven't seen crowded. You think this is crowded? Yeah, he'd love to be alone with her again, just the two of them and the audience, I guess. And she would love for there to be room for one more person on her planet.
Aww.
So he could come with her. She says she'll miss him, and off we go to the next adventure.
Boy, I'm sure glad that's over with.
I'm happy the affair is over.
Me too.
A most annoying, emotional episode.
Yeah, but I learned something today.
When dreams become more important than reality, you give up travel, building, creating.
One jealous god, if all this makes a god.
By sparing your helpless enemy, who surely would have destroyed you, you demonstrated the advanced trait of mercy.
Frankly, I was rather dismayed by your use of the term half-breed. You must admit, it is an unsophisticated expression.
Okay, let me make sure I understand.
Okay.
What Gideon was trying to accomplish.
Yes.
They're overcrowded because they basically don't get sick.
Yep.
And they regenerate body parts and whatever. So then they were going to try to introduce a virus.
Yep.
To kill people off?
Yeah.
But not start from the problem of the birth rate.
It wouldn't change the birth rate. It wouldn't change the length of life expectancy. No.
Okay.
It would have just sheared down their numbers a little.
They would have basically had a pandemic, basically.
Yeah.
He's trying to start a pandemic.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understood like what the heck they were trying to accomplish.
I read that almost everyone involved thought that this was a poor episode.
Okay.
I like what the bite of the apple is, imagine just in the last 100, 200 years, how our life expectancy here on Earth has changed because of modern medicine.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There are a lot of times when I get down on the floor to pick something up and I go to stand up and I think to myself, We did not evolve to live this long.
Probably not.
We evolved to live, people were dying at 30 or whatever, and then modern medicine gave us all of these extra years.
Yeah.
Right. We did not evolve to be that way. It was modern medicine that made the leap.
Not natural. Mm-hmm.
So we should be looking at, Earth is on course for advancements in modern medicine that could change our lifespans and reduce birth defects and all of these things that help keep our numbers down. When you take away the emotion attached to them, right, they naturally help keep our numbers down. What do we do? If that train just runs away,
we're going to be a Gideon.
This could be
and then especially with the abortion and not letting people choose. I mean, I think I'm looking at the whole abortion issue as very detached, not emotional. Do we need another person here that we can't take care of?
Right.
And not just as the individual family can't afford to take care of a child, but the Earth. I mean, how many, we've already, how many people are there in the 7 billion or some crazy amount of people? And and we're growing exponentially. So at some point, the Earth is going to hit a limit.
Population limit,
to where the resources are not the air and the clean water, and then all of the trash that we all put out.
Yep.
At some point, we are going to need to start thinking about that.
Yeah. And this episode chose a solution and ran with it, but you could imagine any number of solutions to this kind of problem.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes me think of the one-child policy.
Yeah, it actually made sense.
Right.
It did make sense. It was kind of harsh.
Yep.
But you can't just go and have all these kids and and how are you gonna pay for it?
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of strain is it on your country? I mean, I get it actually.
Yeah.
I get it.
Why didn't these people build spaceships and spread their seed? Move half their people onto some other uninhabited planet?
Mm-hmm.
There were lots of things they could have tried. They could have tried condoms and all the things Kirk suggested.
Or since the powers that be were ready to sacrifice people, why didn't you just ask people to kill themselves?
Yeah.
If you're
where's your love of life now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're gonna how fair is it to bring some dude that doesn't want to be there, even though they tried to convince him he wanted to be there by shoving pussy in his face? I mean, they tried to soften the blow. Okay, pardon the pun. Pardon. But how fair is that you're taking someone against their will just so that you can introduce a virus to your people? When which is crueler, introducing a virus to your people or just asking them to choose?
Right.
What the problem is. We're as a society. I'd like you to make a decision to help your society and kill yourself. I mean,
basically, no, you're right. You're right.
How is that any different than giving them a disease?
Yeah.
I don't know. Does everybody know what he's doing?
Oh,
I don't know.
Damn it! It's another Futurama reference. What are the machines that they walk into that disintegrate people?
Oh, the disintegrator from that one. From that one episode?
Yeah.
Where they're having a war?
Oh, no, but I didn't think about that, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, because they were literally doing their duty and killing themselves.
That's right.
Because they felt they had a duty.
It also made me think about the TNG episode that I love so much. That one we talk about was Death with Dignity. Half Alive, I think is the name of the episode. That was a culture choosing to put themselves to death at a certain age
to keep this from happening.
Yeah, I mean, they did it for I don't want to become a burden on my children and on my society and that sort of thing. But that probably went a long way to preventing overpopulation too, right? And so this episode comes at it from the other end of the rope, but short of saying stealing an infected captain to unalive your daughter to inspire other young people to unalive themselves too, to repair the damage of overpopulation is kind of wrong.
Yeah.
It never comes back and says, and here are better solutions.
Right. I mean, I get it. They were addressing it in like the best thing that they could think of back then.
Yeah.
So kudos.
Like they tried to suggest sterilization and birth control, but in the episode were met with like that ridiculously Christian conservative kind of backlash to the idea.
Yeah.
Spend more time on all of that.
Yeah.
I think that could have made the episode better.
I agree. It was just weird.
And again, we do keep seeing this like, this is the only way. We can't think of any other way to do it. And we're not going to ask for help. So this is just how it has to go. We've seen a lot of that lately.
Yeah.
And I think in this episode, there was a moment that it kind of sank in for me how much of that is rooted in a kind of desperation.
Yeah.
Right? This guy is just desperate to find a solution and they think they've got the right one and he's got to stick by it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I can understand instead of asking someone else to sacrifice their child, he had to be willing to do that himself.
Yeah.
And she was willing to do it. So.
Did anybody die in this episode?
No. No one died.
Let's get right to business.
Fine, I'm authorized to pay an equitable price. Federation has invested a great deal of money in our training. They're about due for a small return.
Listen, we pay off percentages. We're entitled to a little service for our money, huh?
Is this the way your citizens do business? Their right of petition?
They pay their percentages and the boss takes care of them.
Is there anything else?
As always, we want to thank everyone who supports the show, especially our patrons, and especially our founding admirals at patreon.com/humanisttrek. A special thanks to Russell, Allie, Peter, Sarah, and Sherry.
Well, hello there, interstellar wanderers. Guinan here, your favorite purveyor of wisdom and cosmic cocktails. Now, I've got something to tell you about a little podcast called Humanist Trek. I know. I usually deal with real-life space-time drama at 10 Forward, but this one's worth a listen. You see, they're on a mission. Laughter, exploration, and all that jazz. First off, leave a review, share the love like it's a secret ingredient in a warp core breach. Spread it around, and let the galaxy know what's what. For those feeling a bit more philanthropic and just wanting to splurge some Federation credits, become a patron. It's like having a backstage pass to the holodeck, but better. Early access to episodes, exclusive merch that's cooler than a Ferengi's profit margin, and bonus content like personal logs. Imagine Spock, but funnier. Oh, and did I mention reactions to those very short treks? It's like watching Klingons try to line dance. Pure entertainment. So it's time to join the fleet. Do yourself a favor. Head over to patreon.com/humanisttrek. It's the cosmic investment in laughter and the kind of support that makes the universe a brighter place. Trust me, it means a lot to them. And hey, it might just brighten up your journey through the stars too. Cheers.
I assume you're loitering around here to learn what efficiency rating I plan to give your cadets.
Trainees, to the briefing room. Is that all you gotta say? What about my performance?
Aren't you dead?
I don't believe this was a fair test of my command abilities. There was no way to win.
There's no correct resolution. It's a test of character.
Now, what is that supposed to mean?
I am understandably curious.
May I ask you a question?
Who's been holding up the damn elevator?
All right, Becca's back now with the answer to this week's Starfleet Academy Cadet Challenge. Remind everyone the question for the Mark of Gideon.
In this episode, we see shots of an empty corridor and an empty sick bay. These shots are recycled. What episode did we see these shots in originally?
And we said, in agreement, is there In Truth No Beauty, the episode where they're walking the Medusan around and it had to be empty?
Oh, yeah.
And what's the correct answer?
2 weeks in a row. You got it right.
Oh,
correct.
Yeah. We're guessing. Totally guessing.
Yeah, this is just a streak of luck. We have not improved in any way.
No, we sit here and we talk about it and we talk ourselves into an answer.
Mm-hmm. Next week, we'll be reviewing Star Trek, the original series, Season 3, Episode 17, That Which Survives. A deadly computer image protects a long-dead outpost.
An image?
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of The Outpost. It was the Next Generation episode where they roll up to this planet and the civilization is long dead, but their home security system is still activated. And so it like chases them or whatever. Was that The Outpost? I think that was The Outpost. Anyway, here we are with another all-powerful computer.
Fucking up some shit, yeah.
All right, what's our question for that which survives?
And I don't remember this one.
This episode marks the second and final appearance of what character until they appear in a different franchise series years later.
Harcourt Fenton Mudd.
Was it Mudd?
Harry Mudd? See, I'm looking at her and I'm trying to get like something out of her eyes and I'm getting nothing.
Me? Oh,
no, I'm looking at Becca.
Oh, I can't see it. Because I thought Mudd was only in those two, but maybe.
Oh, no.
Because he came back in Discovery, didn't he?
He did. Indeed. And he may be in the animated series, but I don't know.
What was the question again?
This episode marks the second and final appearance of what character until
Second.
they appear.
Okay, so it's not Mudd. Okay, second and final appearance for a character. Then reappears
until they came back in a different franchise.
In a different franchise?
No, in a different franchise series. Sorry, yeah, fuck that up. No, they're in Star Trek. Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Huh. Okay,
We've only seen them once before.
Jesus.
How many times have we? It's not Sarek, is it?
Oh, it could be Sarek or Amanda.
Ooh, Amanda.
Right?
Ooh, it could be his mom. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a good call. Oh, God. Because we see them all again in Next Gen. Sarek and Amanda.
But we see them, yeah. Oh, God, how do you do this to us, man?
She delights in this.
I take great delight in this.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Okay. All right.
I don't know.
I'm going to say Amanda Grayson. Spock's mommy.
Yeah. I'll agree.
You think so?
I could just say, yeah. I mean,
okay. All right. That's it.
Yeah.
Lock it in. Final answer, Regis. And if you want to play along at home, you know how to do that. Head over to your social media apps, share this episode, use the hashtag Starfleet Challenge, put your answer in there, and we'll pick out somebody that we like best. Next week on Humanist Trek, Star Trek The Original Series, Season 3, Episode 17, That Which Survives.
Live long and prosper.
Kapla!
Humanist Trek is available wherever you replicate your podcast. Follow us on all the social medias at Humanist Trek. Become a patron at patreon.com/humanisttrek. Open hailing frequencies to podcast@humanisttrek.com and visit our website, humanisttrek.com. Humanist Trek is a production of Sarah Austin Media.